I believe the best player at the World Juniors isn't Canadian. The player with the most promising NHL future is, that being Gavin McKenna. But without a doubt, the player, or in this case, American trio, that is going to dominate the World Juniors is that of Ryan Leonard, James Higgins, and Gabe Perreault. These three right now make up the best line in college hockey over at Boston College. Leonard and Perreault were drafted 8th and 23rd respectively in 2023, and last year they helped lead the U.S. to a gold medal. Perreault had 10 points, Leonard 6, but they had to take a bit of a back seat for the likes of Cutter Gauthier, Will Smith, and a bunch of other overagers. This year, it is their team alongside projected 2025 first overall pick, James Higgins. Now, I said that the best player at this tournament isn't Canadian, and realistically, I think you could give that title to any one of these three guys. I mean, take your pick, the highly touted, smooth-skating 18-year-old, or the experienced returnees in Leonard and Perreault. All three of these guys are most likely going to have fantastic NHL careers, and one of the three probably takes home the Hobey Baker this year. All this is to say is that the U.S. might just be the gold medal favorites. I mean, I do like Canada's roster, but a big part of their core are returnees who, by the way, didn't even medal last year. On paper, Canada probably does have more talent than the States, but these guys in the U.S. know each other, play with each other, and are on the best run of results the States has probably ever had at the World Juniors. They've never gone back-to-back, but if they're ever going to do it, it might just be this year. With that, welcome into Top Shelf, presented by Skyscanner. I'm Aidan Thakkar, joined by John Matisz, Kyle Cushman, and Levi Smith. And guys, I was talking about the best player at the tournament and potentially the best team at the tournament. Would you guys agree that the United States might just be the favorites?
It's a good argument for Team USA, of course. The defending gold medalist is always going to be a good one to have in your cap, but you look best forward probably in the tournament, whether you want to go any of those three that you mentioned there. Best defenseman probably in the tournament in Zeev Buium, and definitely the best goaltender in Trey Augustine. That's a tough team to beat. I personally lean the depth of Team Canada, but at the tippy top of the lineup, Team USA is going to be tough to beat.
I think that Canada should be better than last year.
A lot better,
yeah. I mean, they didn't medal last year, and that's very rare for
Low
Canada.
bar.
Low bar. But the team in general just looks better. Like, there were returnees who didn't make the team, and we are going to get all into that, into the roster makeup, as we do have the official Canada roster a little bit earlier than we might have expected. So we get to talk about it, and so we're going to get right into that with the wrap round, kicking that off right now. And I want to talk right about who is the best player on Team Canada. I was talking about who the best player in the tournament is. Best player on Team Canada. I'm going to give you guys three options, but if you want to go off the board, it's up to you. Giving you Gavin McKenna, probably one of the youngest guys at the tournament. Porter Martone, potentially first overall pick consideration, as well as Easton Cowan, Leafs guy, who seemingly can't go a game without getting a point. Best player on Team Canada, who is it?
I think, let me just give you a list of players, and I'll let you be the judge of what my answer is going to be here. Wayne Gretzky, Eric Lindros, Jay Bouwmeester, Jason Spezza, Crosby, McDavid, Bedard. Those are the only players to suit up for Team Canada, younger than Gavin McKenna. I mean, he's got 2 points per game in the WHL now, leading the entire league in scoring. I think this is another case. I know this is another case of Canada getting one of these generational young prospects coming into the tournament. He's so young, and I still think he's their best player. We've seen, he's almost locked to be the first overall pick in a draft that's not taking place for a year and a half. And so when you're dealing with guys like this, it's just a special talent, and I feel like they always deliver on the big stage, especially when they get their name called early. That's my pick. It's not like I'm not saying something crazy here. He's generational.
No, I think that's a fair enough choice, but I will say it's hilarious. When you started that list off with like Wayne Gretzky, I thought you were going to go like Gretzky, Crosby, McDavid, Bedard, McKenna, but then you're like Jay Bouwmeester.
I
won't lie. Like when I
was the guy for a little while.
Yeah, he was good. When I was prepping that list, I was like thinking over them in my head. I'm like, okay, I got to remember all these guys, and that was the one I kept. Jay Bouwmeester, don't forget Jay Bouwmeester. So giving him his flowers.
When I was like 8 years old, I remember Jay Bouwmeester. My dad comes in, he goes, "Aidan, you'll never guess who the Flames signed." And I go, "Alex Ovechkin." And he goes, "No, Jay Bouwmeester." And I was like, "Okay, cool."
Unreal skater.
Yeah,
I got to go with Easton Cowan here. One returning player. I feel like he just has an advantage in that respect. And you mentioned it, or you hinted at it, Aidan. 56-game point streak right now in the OHL. He came into the season a little banged up, but he clearly has hit the ground running. And I don't know, this kid's just, and part of it is the Leafs fairy dust, the sort of like hype around him. But I'm buying into it in terms of what he can do, the type of damage he can do in this tournament.
I think the consistency is key.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and I think that will help him at least play in a huge role. Will he lead the team in points? I don't know.
Yeah, and he's a big game player. Like, you look at his results at the Memorial Cup and the OHL playoffs. He loves that big stage. But for me, I'm actually going off the board here. It's Callum Ritchie for myself. It's always the talk with the World Juniors is it's a 19-year-old tournament. Ritchie is going to be one of the oldest players at the tournament. He's a January birthday. He's 19 years old, so he's not far from turning 20. And I just love his all-around game. It looks like he's going to be Canada's first-line center, going to be playing with the likes of Easton Cowan. I love his playmaking, his skill, like that fake shot that he pulled off in the preseason. He intentionally does that. It's an incredible move. If you haven't seen it, you got to check it out with the Colorado Avalanche there. He has some NHL experience as well. Cal Ritchie is the guy for me.
I think that's a fair enough pick. Honestly, that was the other guy I was considering putting on this list, but I thought the spread of McKenna, Martone, Cowan, three guys, different kind of age groups. Want to move on to a couple guys in the same age group, one guy a year older than them that didn't make the team. Three guys I was very surprised. Canada cut three guys who were drafted in the top 10 in Zane Parekh, Carter Yakimchuk, and Beckett Seneca. But Parekh and Seneca actually got the late call-ups to training camp. Felt like their fate was decided before they got there, considering they were cut. As well as Andrew Cristall, who is dominating in the WHL.
Insane season.
Yeah.
Which of these snubs surprises you the most?
The one that surprised me the most was Beckett Seneca, even though he was the late kind of addition to the roster, just because of how good he's been playing recently. He was on a tear after he was snubbed from the initial roster. He gets named to the roster kind of late. And by all accounts, he had a great camp as well for Team Canada. It seemed like he was doing everything to put himself in conversation to make this team. Third overall pick. He has the size. He has the skill. When I look at what Team Canada ultimately decided to do, I think you could fit one more kind of high skill guy, the high upside, the high ceiling on this roster versus some of the kind of energy bottom six guys that they brought. So Seneca's the one that surprised me because he was having such a good season. He brings the size, he has the high upside, and by all accounts, he had a great camp.
I like Cristall here. And but I'm going to sort of like rework the question. He's the most disappointing guy left off the roster just based on he leads the CHL in points. He's done nothing but improve on his weaknesses this year. You know, smaller guy. People wondered about his skating, about his compete level. He's, maybe he hasn't silenced the doubters in terms of NHL potential, but he's improved in those areas. Second year getting left off the team. I just feel like similar to sort of like what Team USA did at the Four Nations with leaving Tage Thompson off. It's like, just take that highly skilled guy who's going to score. Don't overthink it. I feel like that's kind of what happened here with Cristall. Although I do get it in terms of all the options, and you're building a team, not an all-star team. So it's more of like a disappointment pick for me.
Yeah, I think it's fair enough. Like Seneca and Parekh will probably be on this team.
That's
next
the big
year.
factor.
Cristall's like this is it for a guy, and for a lot of guys, it's if you don't make the World Juniors, your only option to represent Canada ever again is maybe a double IHF World Championship. Like once you get to the Olympic roster and stuff like that, it gets very difficult.
Yes.
Who knows where Cristall will end up in 10 years' time? But he's talented, and he's doing this all without.
He almost
TJ
made the
Ginla
Caps
too.
out of camp. He had
He
a
did,
great
yeah.
preseason as well for Washington.
Yeah, and I think it's such a market inefficiency picking guys who are not great skaters in the draft, and that was the big knock on him, right? Not a big guy, not a great skater. I think that the Caps are going to look like geniuses with this pick. Like, it's not that difficult to improve a guy's skating, especially at that age. So he'll be an interesting guy to watch in terms of like the trends and the development.
Yeah, and part of him not making the roster seems like Canada wants to play this kind of high-speed, high-tempo game, and Cristall maybe doesn't fit into it the same way that some of the other guys brought, but when you're putting up over 2.5 points per game in the WHL, leading the CHL in points per game the way that he is, it's tough leaving a talent like that off the team if you get to the tournament and can't score.
Fair enough. And there will be a lot of great players at this tournament, though, up and down the roster. And if you're headed to Ottawa for the tournament, Skyscanner's got deals on flights, hotels, and car rentals. Make sure you hit the link in our bio to score those deals. We're talking about Cristall. We talked about Ryan Leonard earlier, too. Washington Capitals prospects. Ryan Leonard,
maybe my favorite prospect in all of hockey.
There you
so
go.
Much fun to watch.
There you go. And last year, Ryan Leonard, he didn't even have to play such a massive role on this USA team because they were stacked.
Yes.
We look at the
Very good
like
team.
the NHL now, and it's like, wow, three of like the top prospects, top rookies in the league right now. We're on that gold medal team, and then we're talking about maybe that trio being the best trio at the tournament this year. U.S. is on the come up right now, but I want to talk about that last year's U.S. team because they had some really talented players. We're not even mentioning like Rutger McGroarty or Jimmy Snuggerud. I want to talk about Lane Hudson, Cutter Gauthier, and Will Smith. which of these three guys do you think has the highest ceiling in the NHL?
I think it's Will Smith, and I think he's gone a little under the radar this season because the Sharks are doing this sort of load management. There's a lot of attention on Celebrini, but he's made some strides over the last couple months. Currently injured, unfortunately. But with Smith, I see a guy who has that it factor. I mean, the hands, the vision, the compete level, you name it, he kind of has it. And I think in that Sharks environment, I think he's going to top out at like a very, very good second line center. Obviously, Celebrini will be the top line center. And if I just look at the other two guys, Hudson, love the player, love the creativity, the transition game, the puck play, but like he's going to be an imperfect player in a lot of ways. And then Cutter Gauthier, I just haven't been that impressed with in his early Ducks tenure here. So it was a fairly easy pick with Will Smith. I just think that he's got a really high ceiling.
Yeah, we talk about highest ceiling here, and that's why for me it's Lane Hudson, because it's not most likely to reach that ceiling. It's who has that ceiling. And Lane Hudson is such a unique defenseman in the way that he's an undersized guy, puck-dominant defenseman, unlike we really see across the league. Like, he carries the puck like a Matt Barzal or Mitch Marner from the back end. And so the way that I watch him in the offensive zone and just kind of the shiftiness, the head fakes, the puck dominance, like I mentioned, he has a chance to be one of the more unique defenders in the entire league. He's already playing over 20 minutes a game, already racking up some assists. If he becomes more of a shot threat, if he becomes more of a guy that you can really lean on to be a true power play quarterback and not just a guy that dishes the puck, and if he rounds into a better defender, there's a lot that really needs to come together, but he could be one of the true, unique top-end defenders in the NHL. Again, a lot needs to kind of come together for that to happen, but in terms of just purely looking at the highest ceiling, Lane Hudson's the guy for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think there's a lot of imperfections in his game still, but if he cleans all those up, I mean, we're looking at somebody who we haven't really seen many of these guys recently who look like forwards but play defense is basically the best way to sum it up. But I think all in all, I mean, having those three guys, like those are the three that we're debating, and they were just all on the team last year. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah,
USA is taking crazy strides.
They are, and this is a country that's like historically struggled in international competitions, but it really feels like the tide is turning.
That's scary.
The U.S. National Development Program, I mean, it's pumped out so many NHLers at this point. There's a real, I know it's in the name, but there's a real development system to playing on these World Junior teams, playing on the Four Nations teams in the Olympics. Like, last 20 years, the U.S. has made the biggest strides out of any nation.
100%. And, I mean, Canada still seems to pump out, like, the best of the best. Right, like every time it's a generational prospect, save like Matthews, it's been like a Canadian. If we like look back at like,
and even Matthews wasn't necessarily in that generational tier the way we were talking about it going into the draft.
No, like we were considering a Matthews line A thing. There's like the chatter of that.
Yeah.
Like,
it was like the Anze Kopitar comp,
and
which is a great player.
There
but
was like McDavid Eichel, but it was always McDavid Eichel.
Yes.
Like at the end of the day, but I do think it's really interesting how much better the States has gotten, and I mean. I'm looking at this tournament, and if they go back to back here, it's like that represents because when you see that shift in the juniors, it's like this is going to translate to the future of the NHL, and that's hey, if that happens.
Look at like the 5-peat that Canada had in the late 2000s into the early 2010s, and look at how that translated to Olympic results and such.
Yeah, so it's gonna be curious to see. They win this, maybe the World Juniors again, see what happens at the Four Nations. That could be like a pretty interesting lead up to the Olympics in terms of rivalry building, because I think that's what we need to bring back. Want to push away from the World Junior chatter for now and get into potentially one of the most unfortunate franchises in the NHL. It seems
That's
like
a good way to put it.
Seems like this happens a lot.
Yeah.
It's always pretty easy to talk about how poor the Buffalo Sabres are doing. And it's been like a thing for like over a decade now. So I asked Levi to come up with top 5 to do with something Buffalo sucking.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about one of the worst NHL franchises. I'm talking about one of the worst sports franchises right now. The Sabres are on a 10-game slide right now, which I feel like we say this every year. They're on some sort of massive. They had the 18-game losing streak a couple years ago. And it's just miserable. They are 13 years without being in the playoffs, the longest streak by far in the NHL. The next closest is 8. So you just don't know what to do with the Sabres team. And it's also, I found it a little bit comedic considering where the Bills are right now, because the Buffalo Bills under the same owners, in the last 10 years, they have like the third most wins in the NFL. And the Sabres, I'm sure you can imagine, have the lowest winning percentage in the NHL over the same span. So
Sabres GM said it himself.
yeah, it seems like we know where the attention is focused over there in Buffalo. But yeah, I was trying to figure out a great way to talk about them in some positive lighting, although it's still not the same. And I'm looking at the top 5 guys that they wish they had right now, because if you go back over the last 10 or so years, there is a lot of great players on this Buffalo Sabres team that they had that they did not keep. And this list is so long that I have some honorable mentions to get off first. Yoel Armia was a Sabre for 1 game. Zadorov was a Sabre, Marcus Foligno, Evan Rodriguez. Those are 4 guys that they would absolutely love to have right now, and that's not even in my top 5. So let's get into my top 5, and we start at number 5 with Brandon Montour. If you remember correctly, they traded a first-round pick for him from the Ducks. They saw something in him, and they were right. And what'd they do? 2 years later, shipped him off for a third-round pick. I went back and did some digging. I can't even remember his name. I'm sorry for this third-round pick. He was 88th overall. He hasn't even sniffed the NHL. So that's what they did with Brandon Montour. On to 4th on the list. You want to talk about the Sabres. Their goaltending has not been great over this tenure. And what do you know? They had Linus Ullmark. They drafted Linus Ullmark deep in the draft. I believe he was 163rd overall. So they did their scouting well, and he played well for them, and they just didn't want to sign him to an extension. And what did he do after that? 3 straight years, he went 88-36. The best winning percentage in the NHL the 3 years after he was in Buffalo. Obviously, he won the Vezina in Boston. A terrific goaltender. They just let him walk. So
Didn't even trade him, yeah.
Didn't even trade him, just let him walk. He's the only guy on this list that they didn't trade. So it's all that worse in my books. Now on to 3rd. Ryan O'Reilly. If Ryan O'Reilly's 3rd on any list of guys that you've sent out, I think you know that you have a problem. And this was one, I will say, he could have been higher, but they did acquire Tage Thompson when they shipped him off. So I don't want to punish them too much, because that's their generational forward that they have right now. They also got Vladimir Sobotka and Patrick Berglund in that deal. I don't know if they did too much in Buffalo. They didn't. But yeah, Ryan O'Reilly, they traded him off. This is a center that you need to have on a championship team the year after they dealt him. Won the Selke, won the Conn Smythe, obviously won the Stanley Cup with St. Louis. Better numbers than he's ever had after they dealt him. On to number 2. I'm sure you can guess where this is going, because the Florida Panthers just have such a great track record of fleecing the Sabres. I said Rodriguez, I said Montour. Now Sam Reinhart. They shipped him off. He was good in Buffalo. He had some 20-goal seasons, so I don't think that they didn't see his value exactly, but the guy had 57 goals last year, and he's 3rd in the league right now in goals. And they got Devin Levi and forget the other player, but obviously someone who I don't remember. This is one of the best goal scorers in hockey right now. That was a Sabre for a while, and they still sent him off. And first on my list, the player that I think Buffalo wishes they had the most amongst all these guys, Jack Eichel. I know the saga didn't go well. I think Eichel is partially to blame. I think he wanted to get out, but that also goes to show how they treated him when he was there. This is a generational forward, a guy you build your team around, and they let him walk because of the surgery mishap and the whole saga. So I would like you guys, do you think he's deserving of the 1 spot? I think he's the best player here. I think that the way that played out was a little bit different, but nonetheless, I just gave you 9 guys who I think you put them all together on the same team right now, you have a cup contender.
I can toss Will Borgen would make it a nice
Yes.
top 10 there, and he would fit in nicely with this team right now in the top 4 as a right-handed shot. I think you have the list right. The thing about Reinhart, though, is I think he's the one that really got away in terms of at the time of his last extension, he wanted to go long-term.
Yeah.
And they said, you know what, we'll give you a year, we'll give you 2. We're going to see how things go. And how things went is that, he ends up in Florida and takes off, and he scored 50-plus last year. He's going to score 50-plus this year.
Literally leads the calendar year in the NHL in goals. When you're including regular season, playoffs, everything, the calendar year, Sam Reinhart is number 1.
So that one really hurts. The Eichel one, I feel like it was percolating. It was building up over time.
There was the neck surgery thing. It was
he was
messy.
the face of the franchise during all these lean years. And, I just feel like his, personality isn't great in sort of, getting out of those bad years. Whereas I feel like Reinhart was sort of, he was 2nd overall. It's not like this guy was some gem that they were we'll move on. It's you draft him 2nd overall and then you don't even offer him a long-term extension. So it's tough.
It's crazy too, because when I was doing this digging, I found a game log Not only were all these guys basically on the team for the most part, Brandon Montour wasn't even on defense. That was when he was playing winger.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Let's
Like
go.
they had a line of, I think Montour and Evan Rodriguez were on the same line. Like it was just crazy to see some of these names on this team because you look at it and you're like, how did this, first of all, not turn into anything? And how did they not pick up on a couple of these guys? There were so many good players. And I think it goes to show why they haven't been in the playoffs for 13 years and why
I want to throw one more name out here that I don't think many people realize was in the Sabres organization, and that's Brandon Hagel. He was drafted by the Sabres, and they opted not to sign him out of the CHL. He returned back for his overage season, signed as a free agent with Chicago, and obviously is now a Four Nations player for Team Canada. That's a prospect they had in the system in 2016 through 2018. And they just relinquished his rights. They opted not to sign him. This wasn't a case like a Jimmy Vesey or an Adam Fox where they opt to go somewhere else. They had him, and they were like, no thanks, we're good.
That's just such a tough look. And I feel like we talked last week about the panic button. And if they hit the panic button right now and trade a guy like Dylan Cousins or Owen Power, it
They're
just
gonna end
feels
up on
like
this
it's going to
list.
be another name on that list. Like there was 4 Cup winners and a Vezina winner on that board right there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a culture of losing or a culture of that losing's okay in Buffalo because they've got the players, they've got the prospects, but something's gone wrong there, and I don't know what it's going to take to fix it. It's not a generational player. They've had some come through. It's not a franchise player. They had them come through. It's not a new coach. They've tried a lot of them.
It's probably a change in ownership, which is obviously the most difficult thing to do. You don't just change owners overnight, right? And with the Bills thing, I think Josh Allen stumbled into good manager and coach. I feel like it's, you know what I mean? Like I feel like the Sabres are maybe more of a reflection of Terry Pegula's ownership style or I guess what he's produced or what he brings to the table. So if I'm pointing fingers, this long of a playoff drought, gone through this many GMs and coaches, a handful of top 5 picks, like it's the owner.
Yeah. All right, I want to move on from this and get a little bit more into what you're kind of thinking around the league right now, John. There's an interesting happening this weekend when Matvei Michkov almost scored a Michigan. Notoriously, John Tortorella does not like the Michigan. 2021 on a panel, he was saying like it doesn't belong in the game or it's not good for the game or something like that. He had some comments about it after the game, but I want to get into like what your thoughts are on this situation, what you're hearing from other coaches and agents around the league.
Yeah, sure. So just to recap what Torts ultimately said, he said, the Michigan, which is the lacrosse style goal for anyone listening that doesn't know what that is, he said it shouldn't be in the game. He's been saying that, like you said, since he's been, when he was on ESPN and went on about that when Zegras was pulling off Michigan's left, right, and center. He said he's lost the argument with Michkov, which is kind of like the news of it, where it's like, okay, I'm going to let him do his thing, and I've tried to talk him out of it. And then the third thing, which I found really interesting, was that he was talking about how Michkov is this tremendous playmaker, which is true, tremendous vision, true. He should be using those behind the net moments for different things. He should be finding another teammate. He should be maybe circling and doing something else with that chance. Because when you're behind the net like that, like you have only so many options, and Michkov is really going for that Michigan. And so that's what happened with Torts. And then I reached out to a few people, a couple of coaches, and the NCAA coach that I talked to had an interesting take where he said he kind of disagreed on the turnover thing, where if you're going to turn the puck over, first of all, that's the spot. Behind the goal line, I mean, okay, it hits the goalie. Maybe it's a rebound. You put it in. You're right there on the doorstep. Or maybe you get a whistle. That's good too. You get a new face-off. And then that's all obviously compared to like if you turn the puck over in your own zone, blue line, etc. So of all places, not a bad place to turn over. And then the NCAA coach also pointed out, though, that Torts might be talking about this and trying to downplay it with Michkov because he doesn't want to show up the other team, get the other team all riled up, because the NCAA coach said that happened to his team where the Michigans pulled on them and his bench just erupted, and all of a sudden the whole game is thrown out of whack in terms of trying to win, and it's all about the code and just sort of like showboating versus trying to win hockey games. So the NCAA coach I thought made a good point where it's like what are Torts' real intentions here? Is he trying to just downplay it so that it doesn't happen and he's not in this game where the other team's all pissed off that they were showboating? So that's interesting. And then I texted a QMJHL coach about it, and he literally replied with, "I'm old school. I don't like Michigan's either." And that was pretty much the extent of the conversation. So it's not just Torts, right? Like, this is a generational thing. All the guys who have pulled off this move, Sveshnikov, Zegras, Bedard, you go up and down the list, Philip Forsberg, like, they're all under 30. They're all guys who have grown up trying these highly skilled things. And then the last guy I talked to was an OHL coach who was kind of in the middle of all this in terms of, like, he said he's fine with the Michigan as long as it's with a sort of team-first approach. So, sure, do the Michigan, try the lacrosse-style goal if that is the right option at that moment. Don't just practice it constantly when, you know, there's other things that you could be doing in practice, one-timers, working on your shot. Like, just pick your spots, and, you know, your team will be happy if you score. The other team will be pissed off if you score, and that's a good thing in this respect. And you just got to pick your spots. And that's kind of where I land on it too, to be honest. It's like, it can get a little out of hand. Like, I think we saw it with Zegras and where his career has gone, where he became the Michigan guy. He became the creative playmaker, flashy guy. And he maybe, you know, lost the plot a little bit in terms of developing into a well-rounded NHLer. So, interesting conversation. And it's funny how, you know, this all comes full circle where Torts a few years ago is just going off on Zegras. And then now he's got Michkov doing the same thing under his own watch, and he's sort of like, I give up.
Yeah, I also wonder, like, if he's a coach at that time, does he come out and say something in 2021? He's on a panel, and he's asked about it, and he's John Tortorella, the guy with the notorious opinions of being old school and hard and stuff like that. So I think, like, yeah, it's been 3 years since that, or maybe even longer than that, and I think he's probably just relaxed himself a little bit on his overall thoughts on the like, idea of his players going for the Michigan. But if you do want to go see that dynamic duo that is Michkov and Torts, Skyscanner can save you up to 30% on your next flight to Philly. Just hit the link in our bio or description. The Michigan, I think it's fun. I personally think it's fun, and it's another reason as to why I love hockey. But I want to get into our why we love hockey moment of the week, and that is e-bugs. I don't know if you guys saw what happened Saturday night, but it was in the Senators game. Anton Forsberg gets hurt in warm-ups or something like that. I don't even think that, and they need the e-bug. So Zach Dietz, University of Ottawa goaltender, has to get to the game. He gets stuck in traffic, so what does he do? He gets out of the car, runs about 500 meters, he said. He actually ended up hopping in somebody else's SUV that was going to the rink who dropped him off there because he realized a mile up like the highway.
That's a tough
Canada,
run.
Ontario.
With the pads and everything. Oh.
But he obviously doesn't get into the game. But e-bug situations are fantastic, right? Is there much that's better?
It's kind of fun. Like, I get why NHL teams, or I get the argument against it, but where else in pro sports are you going to have a random guy just come in and get to suit up and get that pro experience? It's so rare that e-bugs actually have to go into a game and it becomes like a legit situation, and when it does, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs and they lose in hilarious fashion. So really, it's okay anyways. So I have no problem with it. It gives people a very unique experience, kind of the experience of their life. It's really cool in my opinion.
I also love how these guys become like mini celebrities. They're 15 minutes of fame. You had the Blackhawks guy, I feel like his first name was Scott. He was an accountant.
No, that's the coach, but you're right.
I feel like it was Scott, but I can't remember anything much about him. But just like, it's hilarious to think this accountant just like ends up in an NHL game. David Ayres, the quote unquote Zamboni driver, I guess he was like more of a maintenance worker, and he got all sensitive about the Zamboni driving stuff once that all became a meme. But I mean, that was probably a once in a lifetime thing in terms of him backstopping the Hurricanes to a win there. But it is one of those things where sometimes it's like, oh, this is bad on the league, but then when you actually take a step back and don't think about it too seriously or too much, you go, this is kind of fun.
And it's a regular season game.
Yeah, to me, it's the closest thing we'll ever see in any pro sports in America to a fan getting to play. You will
Exactly.
There's guys on the ends of NBA benches who played 4 years of college, great players, and they can't even get in the NBA games. Obviously, you're not going to send anyone who has not played football or a smidgen of football out onto an NFL field. Same thing with baseball. It's the one time in sports where you get to be like, like that's what it would be like maybe for a guy like me to go out there and play hockey. It's crazy.
So only thing I will say, a fan playing in a game and scoring. West Ham United. It happened in like a friendly. They used all their subs. Player got hurt. Fan was like heckling the striker. So managers like go in there and he goes in and scores a goal.
No way.
Yeah, I think so. But I think fans being in sports, awesome. I think as long as it's in the regular season, it's a great thing and it's fun. I think
it
they
doesn't
should
really happen in the playoffs because you have black aces, you have extra roster
exactly.
spots, so it's not really an issue.
And I think they should push a little bit towards more of like the university goaltender or something like that.
That's
in
an
the
interesting
city.
thing because now with the different collegiate rules, before it's been Canadian university goalies can do this because of the amateur tryout situation and whatnot. So that's why we see like a U of Ottawa goalie get in, and why in Chicago cases it's some guy that played 10 years ago and is an accountant. So maybe there's circumstances that can change for American teams and having collegiate goalies be able to come in. But yeah, it's very different where like the Leafs had like a U of T goalie go in, Jed Alexander, a year or two ago. Like it's one thing if it's like an active goaltender or like some 32-year-old accountant that's coming in cold that plays beer league and hasn't actually played like a game in like 10 years.
Yeah, no, I just think it's another fun hockey
It's
thing.
fun.
It's only
Yes.
hockey where you get something like this. You never need an emergency.
And it's always a
anything
cool
for any
story.
other
And
sport,
my
so.
favorite part about the Ottawa thing is that it just underlines the fact that they have their arena in Canada, and there's so much traffic getting to the rink that the e-bug can't even get to the rink.
And
It's
he's got to run up a hill, like there's just a slight incline, I'm sure, which is brutal. But he's like maybe like I get to go into the dressing room. I get to do this. Like that's
You
a
get
dream
the
come
jersey,
true for
like,
any
oh,
kid.
you gotta.
Yeah, let alone just like any university player or anything like that. It's awesome. With that, time to go to top shelf trivia. That took me a little second there. Levi, take us away.
Yeah, the lights are pink. I have a special board to pull out. Whoops.
Woo!
We have our trivia leaderboard.
Look at that
And
production
so-
value.
Yeah, this is incredible. Whiteboard, kind of like I'm drawing up plays for you guys here. I have to give him his flowers. John
Yes,
gets
sir.
his first win. It's not
Bravo.
the straightest line. But that is the updated leaderboard for us there.
Where's the -1 for Aidan there?
Yeah, I did say I'd take a -1.
Aidan he did
But
want
I'm
it.
gonna.
Negative to Ali's
I
no.
don't think that's actually within the rule book of top shelf trivia that I created.
No,
so.
he did want his -1. But yeah, credit to John last week. This week, we kicked off the show with the World Juniors. And obviously, we know how many great players have played in the World Juniors. But do you know how many great players didn't play in the World Juniors? Is where I'm going
Okay.
with this
Ooh,
trivia.
fun.
It's going to be rapid fire. You're going to take turns. We'll start with John because he won. I want 10 seconds max here. I have the list of the top 10 active points leaders who never played in the World Juniors. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a preface. Some of these guys got snubbed. Some of these guys didn't exactly have the chance to go. I'll leave it at that. We'll say that. I'm not going to elaborate more. I think you'll figure it out.
Yeah. So quick, this is just the like division, like there's the different divisions and stuff like that.
Yeah, the World Juniors, the
Like,
elite.
Yeah,
The,
sorry.
the top
U20,
division,
yeah.
the U20, yeah.
The
gotcha.
top 10 active skaters. So for guys like the Beckett Senecas of the world, don't get down on yourself yet. He'll probably be there next year, but you'll see these guys on this list. There's always a chance you could still end up there.
Okay.
So we'll start with you, John. You get the first
Active points leaders.
active points leaders. I'm not if you can read those teams. It's a little bit zoomed out there.
And those are how many points they have currently.
How many
Okay.
points is on the right? You got their team name on the left. First pick. Where do you think?
Anze Kopitar with the LA Kings there at the top.
Anze Kopitar is correct. He's
Are there
the
team
all-time
names
leader.
over there?
There's team names on the left. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can relay them to you if you'd like to see them. But Anze Kopitar is correct. Obviously, he couldn't suit up for Slovenia. They weren't in it. On to you, Kyle.
I think Matt Duchene is up there.
Matt Duchene is correct. Second on the list. No
Okay.
World Junior appearance for him. Yeah, we've got 2 stars back to back if you can't read that one underneath. And then, the Preds, the Sens. I'll just read them out in case you can't see them. The Hurricanes, the Oilers, Wild, Blackhawks, Blue Jackets.
One of the Oilers is Draisaitl, right? Because he
One of
didn't
the-
get to go.
One of the Oilers is not Draisaitl.
Oh, he did get to go.
Did play in the World Juniors, yeah, for Germany.
I thought. Which
I'm
is
gonna-
the German?
I'm gonna try that other Stars pick as Jamie Benn.
Not Jamie Benn. It's just almost the exact right train of thought, but he was there. Jamie Benn did suit up. I think he was point per game in his one stint with the World Juniors as well. On to you, Kyle.
I don't know if he's played enough NHL games to be as high as he is, but it's the Nashville Predator, Jonathan Marchessault.
The Nashville Predator is not Jonathan Marchessault.
Okay.
It's a good shout, though.
Okay. The Ottawa Senator. What's the point tally there?
He's got 760, I believe.
Okay, never mind. And there's 2 Oilers that have a lot of points. I guess Zach Hyman, maybe?
No Zach Hyman.
He went there?
No Zach Hyman.
No, I don't know.
He just doesn't have enough points.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll go Minnesota Wild, Zuccarello.
Matt Zuccarello. There we go. Look at
Nice.
John. He's keying in on the guys who just couldn't go there. They didn't have a country represent. Matt Zuccarello's correct. Back to you, Kyle.
Is one of the Oilers Jeff Skinner?
Jeff Skinner there's just one Oilers player.
Oh, sorry. My
And
bad.
he is the Oiler, though. Nicely done. He had no World Junior appearance for him.
Oh, man.
2-2. And it seems we've got a bit of a trend going on
apparently.
again for Aidan here.
Gosh.
Still 6 guys on the list here.
Ottawa Senators.
I would get off the Ottawa one.
Okay, I'm going to get off the Ottawa Senators. Thank you for that.
You're not going to
Is that-
remember him as a
What are the
Sen.
last 2 teams on the list there?
The last 2 teams are the Hawks and the Jackets.
The Jackets. You got anyone with like a lot of points in the
It's
Jackets?
2 guys who are at vastly different points in their career. One is very old, one is not so old.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right. Interesting.
He's still up there. Obviously, he's on
Um,
this list, but
I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think like Monahan played at the World Juniors. I'm not sure if he did or not. I don't think he did because he played with Calgary in his rookie year. Sean Monahan.
Sean Monahan's the Jacket.
Yeah.
Nicely
Nice.
done.
Cool.
Really good. Yeah,
Nice.
he's the last one on this list. Yeah, he was no World Juniors. I think he got snubbed.
Well, you know,
the
he
year
played.
before.
Well, yeah, but he would have been in his draft year, which is a tough like
to
a
do.
lot.
Yeah.
Very few guys do get in
Yeah.
there on the draft year. So
All right, halfway through, there's only one guy in the bottom 4 there that you're missing, so you still got the whole top open.
Splitting the board.
Yeah.
I'll go up to the top here. Just try that Stars one again. Is that Tyler Seguin?
Tyler Sagan.
Yeah.
That is
Wow.
Tyler Sagan.
Taylor
Never-
and Tyler. Only Taylor made the team.
Yeah,
There you
Tyler
go.
Sagan.
Nice.
No World
Nice.
Juniors. That was a
Good
a
throwback.
bit of a debacle, but
Taylor or Tyler.
yeah, 2 stars there. John, I believe that's 3 for you, 2 for Kyle, 1 for
One for
Aidan.
me. Yeah.
I'm
One
gonna
more for John. I think he wins. Right. Pretty close.
Close.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm
Depending on how
I'm
many-
gonna go longevity play here. Is Pat Maroon the Blackhawk?
Pat Maroon is not the Blackhawk.
Oh.
Good shout though. You were thinking along the definitely the right train of thought there.
Is it Nick Foligno then?
Nick Foligno is the Blackhawk. Yeah, he
You
did
gave
not.
me.
That's a
You
tough
gave me
one.
that one by
That's a tough
going
one.
It was
Maroon
kind of a toss up
Yeah.
there. Yeah, Nick Foligno was there. So nice. Aidan's back to 2, 3-2-2. Go back to
think
We
John.
need a John miss here.
The Hurricanes one, I'm going to go with. I have 2 guys in mind, and I'm going to go Brent Burns.
Brent Burns was at the World Juniors. He did play there. I was thinking the same because he obviously wasn't the forward that he was before he was a defenseman, so maybe he just wasn't
Right.
good.
Yeah.
But no, he was there as a forward, and I think he was close to points per game PPG when he was there as well. Back to you, Kyle.
He probably played Roman Yossi.
Roman Yossi did play. Yeah, I think he probably got Switzerland there himself, if I'm being honest. That might have been the only way they were there. 3 left still. It's Nashville, Sens, and Hurricanes for those at home.
Part of me is like curious, like on the same logic as Monahan, did Stamkos make it in as D-1? How many points is that there?
That would be 788 for the
I think
Preds.
he's probably got to be close to 1K though, or at least at 1K. So I don't think it's Stammer. Who has that many points for Nashville? Ryan O'Reilly.
Ryan O'Reilly.
I was
Nice.
gonna go with
Aidan.
that.
Oh,
Very
that was
nicely done. That's 3 for Aidan.
Back
3
in
for
it.
John. He's
Back
right
in
back
business.
in it. 2 left. David. Ooh.
Whoa. What is that?
That's tough.
Okay, wait, we're all tied, right?
No, Kyle
Kyle's
is-
at
No,
two.
I'm behind. That's tough because that was gonna be my next guess too.
Was that going to be John's next guess?
I was going to go Hurricanes.
Okay.
Okay.
Jordan Stahl.
Jordan Stahl's correct.
All right, he's got it anyways.
He's got it
there you
anyways.
go.
I
David
can't
Perron.
believe that. David Perron. is
I
the
thought
last
Jordan
guy
Stahl
on the
had a
list.
lot more points than that.
Like,
That was
I
gonna
thought
be
he
one
was.
of my
I thought he
guesses
played for
too.
Canada. That was my thing.
Oh,
I'm like,
okay.
I feel like he would have played for Canada.
That
Oh
is
my
a
gosh.
second dub
That's
for
2.
John.
Yeah, I'll write it down. Board go. Write it down now.
Get
for
this
John.
official board out to
Very
show.
nicely
Bravo.
done. Two checks in one episode. You don't see that very often.
No.
John is up to 2, and I'm glad you guys got them all. I was worried you might miss the one that I almost said there, but Kyle did say he had it. Yeah, so like I said, you don't have to go to the World Juniors to be great, but it does help.
I think it's fun because there's guys who don't go to the World Juniors and are great, and there are guys who are great at the World Juniors and then totally
Yeah.
never pan out.
Yeah.
It's total like
Cody
this or
Hodgson.
that thing. And I'm so excited for this tournament to kick off on Boxing Day. It's gonna be so fun to watch. I love it when it's in Canada too because like the games are actually like watchable, like time wise at least.
Yes.
But that is all the time we're going to have until the World Juniors. Next time we see you guys, we will be chatting more World Juniors. The tournament will be on. That's all the time we have for Top Shelf. Thanks to our friends at Skyscanner for putting on this show. Make sure you like and subscribe and come back for our next show. We'll see you in a couple weeks.